Hey guys, and welcome to the recap video for Game 4 of my Best of 5 Finals match against Orry Swift at this summer's Scrabble Players Championship held in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I won the first two games of the finals match, but Orry fought back forcefully with a perfect game, according to the computer, in Game 3 to hang on and force Game 4. Again, an elimination game for Orry. I'm up 2-1. He's got to win the next two to come back. I just have to win one out of the next two. And especially after losing Game 3, I was happy to have a strong start here in Game 4, drawing an easy rack with an S, a blank, tons of available bingos. I play Invents for 64 points, figuring the V was a good tile to make the blank as it prevents overlaps, and it's also difficult to bingo through. The computer wants me to play Tensing, presumably because that would avoid putting the E next to the double underscores, but either way, it's a very small difference, and I was just happy to start off the game strong. Orry was not feeling so good at this point, having DDQV on his opening rack, and he is forced to play Cade for just 14 points, which does at least keep the board fairly open, creating another line for sevens above the D in Cade, which he's happy to do given he is down early. I don't have a great rack here after my opening bingo. I ended up playing Jivey for 29 points through the blank V of Invents, which felt pretty good here. Doesn't keep a great leave, but it scores well, unloads the clunky J, and blocks a couple floaters that Orry might use for bingoing. The computer wants me to play tie-in for 30, which is actually not an option I generated here. I certainly should have at least considered it. Keeping the J is interesting. It's normally not a great tile to keep, but when you do have a lead, it's a bit more acceptable, as it can be a good scoring tile that you can use to outrun or respond well to your opponent's bingos. It also would allow me to not keep two T's, which is, of course, unideal. So maybe a small mistake here, but either way, I think Jivey is perfectly reasonable. The computer says it is about 0.7% worse than tie-in. Orry gets a clutch draw here, pulling a bingo of Invader out of the bag. He can either play Invaders to the S of Invents or Invader above Cade. There's really no reason not to take the extra 12 points by playing up here, which is exactly what he does, virtually tying the game. Another awkward draw for me, pulling WU, one of the most dreaded combos in Scrabble, out of the bag, leaves me with a tough turn. I end up playing Worm, which does appear to be virtually my best play here. It scores well and takes out the biggest threat, namely the R of Invader, but NTTU is a really bad leave, which is why I strongly hesitated to play this. I almost made the computer's second choice of Watt, which scores 9 fewer points, but it keeps the M, which is a lot better than keeping the duplicated T, while still mostly blocking the R, and also threatening some nice follow-up plays like Mutt for about 30 points on the 2-row on my next turn. However, I figured that Orry's often going to go there for a big score himself. After all, there are 7 more A's he could use to play a do, as well as 3 other U's for Udo, and lots of 3 and 4 point tiles that go above a W and ET. So I didn't like my chances at actually getting to use this spot and figured I might just be helping Orry more. So I decided to grab the extra 9 points and not give back that spot at the expense of a worse leave, which the computer thinks is just about a toss-up, but has a very slight preference for my play of Worm. Orry plays Fizzes for 40 points. It actually wants him to play Peh for 31, a bit of a counterintuitive play here, keeping the Z. I'm guessing that is because he is going to be able to threaten Zeal for 46 as a follow-up on his next turn. Fizzes does keep BL, which is not an amazing leave, although the BL does have good synergy, especially with ABLE being a common ending, and it scores 9 more points. And on an open board like this, it is often good to keep bingo tiles as opposed to scoring tiles like the Z. So Fizzes is a bit more natural for this board shape, but I think the reason the computer prefers Pet is just because he has a guaranteed solid play with his Z next turn, either Zeal for 46, or in the event that gets blocked, at the minimum, Bizzes for 36 over here, and possibly something even better. So an instructive turn here. Again, usually on these open boards, it's nice to go for bingos, but sometimes high-scoring tiles, especially the Z, which is the most flexible of the 8 and 10-point tiles, can be a big asset if there are big spots on the board. Either way, though, Fizz is a very reasonable play, and it puts me in a tricky spot here, holding all 1-pointers, including duplicate N's and duplicate T's. And here I made what I believe is a bit of an inaccuracy. I played Tan for 23 points, which does score about as well as anything, and keeps the NST, but it keeps the U, which is really not a good tile, especially with all 3 other U's still unseen, which increases my chances of drawing a second U, which would be absolutely horrible. Something like Unhat here, or the much more aggressive Haunt, I think would have been better to try to set up my S while getting rid of my U. It depends how aggressive I want to be here. With it being an even game, unhat is probably a bit more prudent. There are still 2 more S's unseen, either of which Orry could easily have, so this could be giving back a lot of counterplay to him on the bottom. Unhat does set up my S for unhats bingos, but in a less dangerous fashion, so Orry is not necessarily going to have a great play every time he has an S. So I think unhat would have been a little bit better here. Of course, the downside is it doesn't keep any vowels at all, so I do run the risk of having very few or even no vowels on my next turn. While the U is a bad vowel, it is still a vowel, so it does offer me some sense of security in that way, and it does score 5 more points. So the computer rates this as a small mistake, and as was the theme in Game 3, guys, I made a small mistake, and I got punished for it, because this gave Orry a spot for Gambler. Now, he still would have been able to play Gambler had I played one of the other plays I was thinking of with Rid, but this would have been way worse, because it would have scored 8 less, and also given me massive counterplay on the top row. So my mistake here of playing Tand gave Orry a much better bingo, which turned out to be a big swing. Thankfully for me, the L in Gambler is a lifesaver. I don't have any 7s on my rack here, but I do have Butanols, which is the only playable bingo, and it allows me to stay in the game for now. Because Orry draws the second blank and slaps down Pictured for 86 points, tied with Captured for his best bingo, and taking a commanding lead on an increasingly exhausted board. I have a pretty good draw here, pulling one of the last 2 S's, which is key, to try to hit a 7-letter word hooking Angs on the 13 row, but I really don't have anything great right now. Being down 76 and without any great scoring plays, I'm starting to feel the pressure, and I feel like I need to play something forcing, which is why I play Key and Kid for 20 points, setting up a big S-hook with Skid. I figured Orry would often block this. If he had the other S, of course, he could make a big play with Skid, which would be a disaster. But that's a risk. Being down 76, I felt like I needed to take. And if he does decide to block for a small score by making a play hooking in at 1J, then at least I guarantee the S-hook of Ang staying open, as well as the N of Invents, which could be a useful tile for me on my next turn. However, Orry is interested in none of this. He is interested in playing his 3rd consecutive bingo of Flexion for 98 points to the open N of Invents, really slamming the door on this one as he takes a 154-point lead. I do have a bingo in response to the L of Flexion, Vestural, so I am maybe clinging on to some hope here if I can draw another bingo or a huge play through the V out of the bag, but Orry smartly blocks the V here with a Ver. It's a big point sacrifice. He could play Thief for 42 points, but this is a very heads-up play. He's got a big lead, and the V is absolutely his biggest threat here, because if you look at the unseen tile pool, there is a strong possibility I'm going to have an O, an E, and an R, and be threatening overwords through the V. It's a similar theme to an earlier game when I was thinking about playing Vox, you guys may recall, at I1 early in the game. That was in Game 2 where I jumped out to an early lead, but decided not to, in part because I was afraid of over triples that Orry might have. Here, Orry wisely takes care of the threat of me having over triples, especially, again, exacerbated by the numbers of E's, O's, and R's in the bag and the size of his lead. FHNX is a clunky leave. However, there are tons of vowels unseen. The pool is very lopsided, 15 vowels to 10 consonants, so he is very likely to draw vowels on his next turn. He's likely to draw into Thief, which he could play now. He's likely to get a decent X play. This is a very smart decision by Orry at this point of the game, and I had another terrible draw here. At this point, there's really nothing for me to do. The computer wants me to play Mug here for 7, setting up my second G with MUGG being valid. Even if I draw a bingo there, it's hard to imagine it scoring enough. I play Wag for 25, hoping to maybe draw one of the E's for you and get a big bingo on the right. I'm pretty much dead at this point, whatever I do. Orry plays Thief here, very nice play, and I draw nothing. So here I play Bug again. It really doesn't matter what I do. There's nothing I can do here that gives me a realistic chance of winning the game, assuming Orry doesn't make a big mistake, which I'm quite confident he wouldn't. He plays Deli for 40, continuing to score and keeping the X for added scoring pressure if I were to get something big. I don't. I play Pooh here for 12. Again, just kind of moving tiles at this point. I know the game is over. Or he makes a very nice play of Expirer through 2 disconnected tiles. And here I decided to challenge this play, which is actually a really big spread blunder. I get a whopping 70 more spread points if I do play Easy and Expirers for 50. But at this point, I think I was just a little bit frustrated. I couldn't remember for sure if Expirer was a word. There are a lot of verbs that feel like they should take an R in order to become a noun, meaning someone who does that verb, and don't. So I couldn't remember if Expirer was on that list. I had reviewed that list not too long ago, but I couldn't quite remember. It's also worth mentioning spread doesn't really matter that much, guys, in this format, because either way, we were going to be going to a decisive game 5. It was going to be 2-2, and it was going to come down to whoever won game 5 would win the match and the title. So challenging here isn't really a mistake functionally. It doesn't really matter. I was just kind of frustrated and decided to challenge just to keep Orry honest. Of course, it is a valid word, and he got a free turn and went out with Ono and won in a landslide victory here, 584 to 367. So once again, Orry continuing his outstanding play, making just a total of 0.7 mistakes this game according to the computer. Super impressive stuff, especially under pressure of elimination. I made 2.0 mistakes. Of course, one of those full mistakes was challenging Expirer. Otherwise, I played fairly well overall. Again, Tan was possibly a slight inaccuracy that I got severely punished for. Like I said, in Game 3, guys, there is no margin for error at this level of Scrabble. You have to bring your A game. If you make even small mistakes, you will get punished, and that is exactly what Orry did to me in both Game 3 and Game 4. So he deservedly forces a decisive Game 5. And that is what we're going to be covering tomorrow, guys. Spoiler alert, it was quite a game, so brace yourselves and get ready for the last recap video in this series of Game 5 tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you all there. Thanks very much for watching, and have a good one. Bye-bye.